The Russo-Ukrainian War (C) is an ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, which began in February 2014. Following Ukraine's Revolution of Dignity, Russia occupied and annexed Crimea from Ukraine and supported pro-Russian separatists fighting the Ukrainian military in the Donbass War. The first 8 years of conflict also included naval incidents, cyber warfare, and heightened political tensions. In February 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine and began occupying more of the country. In early 2014, the Euromaidan protests led to the Revolution of Dignity and the ousting of Ukraine's pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych. Shortly after, pro-Russian unrest erupted in eastern and southern Ukraine, while unmarked Russian troops occupied Crimea. Russia soon annexed Crimea after a highly disputed referendum. In April 2014, Russian-backed militants seized towns in Ukraine's eastern Donbass region and proclaimed the Donetsk People's Republic (DPR) and the Luhansk People's Republic (LPR) as independent states, starting the Donbass War. The separatists received considerable but covert support from Russia, and Ukrainian attempts to fully retake separatist-held areas failed. Although Russia denied involvement, Russian troops took part in the fighting. In February 2015, Russia and Ukraine signed the Minsk II agreements to end the conflict, but they were never fully implemented in the years that followed. The Donbass War settled into a violent but static conflict between Ukraine and the Russian and separatist forces, with many brief ceasefires but no lasting peace and few changes in territorial control. Beginning in 2021, Russia built up a large military presence near its border with Ukraine, including within neighboring Belarus. Russian officials repeatedly denied plans to attack Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed irredentist views and denied Ukraine's right to exist. He criticized the enlargement of NATO and demanded that Ukraine be barred from ever joining the military alliance. Russia recognized the DPR and LPR as independent states. On February 24, 2022, Putin announced a special military operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine, claiming Russia had no plans to occupy the country. The Russian invasion that followed was internationally condemned. Many countries imposed sanctions against Russia and increased existing sanctions. In the face of fierce resistance, Russia abandoned an attempt to take Kiev in early April. From August, Ukrainian forces began recapturing territories in the northeast and south. In late September, Russia declared the annexation of 4 partially occupied regions, which was internationally condemned. Russia spent the winter conducting inconclusive offensives in the Donbass. In spring 2023, Russia dug into positions ahead of another Ukrainian counteroffensive, which failed to gain significant ground. The war has resulted in a refugee crisis and tens of thousands of deaths. At the onset of the Crimean conflict, Russia had roughly 12,000 military personnel from the Black Sea Fleet, 35, in several locations in the Crimean Peninsula such as Sevastopol, Kacha, Vardyansk, Simferopol Rayon, Sarik, and others. In 2005, a dispute broke out between Russia and Ukraine over control of the Sarik Cape lighthouse near Yalta and a number of other beacons. 37, 38. Russian presence was allowed by the basing and transit agreement with Ukraine. Under this agreement, the Russian military in Crimea was constrained to a maximum of 25,000 troops. Russia was required to respect the sovereignty of Ukraine, honor its legislation, not interfere in the internal affairs of the country, and show their military identification cards when crossing the international border. 39. Early in the conflict, the agreement's generous troop limit allowed Russia to significantly strengthen its military presence, deploy special forces and other required capabilities to conduct the operation in Crimea under the pretext of addressing security concerns. 35. According to the original treaty on the division of the Soviet Black Sea Fleet signed in 1997, Russia was allowed to have its military bases in Crimea until 2017, after which it would evacuate all military units including its portion of the Black Sea Fleet from the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and Sevastopol. On April 21, 2010, former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych signed a new deal with Russia, known as the Kharkiv Pact, to resolve the 2009 Russia-Ukraine gas dispute. The pact extended Russia's stay in Crimea to 2042, with an option to renew. The initial reaction to the escalation of tensions in Crimea caused the Russian and European stock market to tumble. 398. The intervention caused the Swiss franc to climb to a 2-year high against the dollar and 1-year high against the euro. The euro and the US dollar both rose, as did the Australian dollar. 399. The Russian stock market declined by more than 10%, while the Russian ruble hit all-time lows against the US dollar and the euro. 400. 401. 402. The Russian central bank hiked interest rates and intervened in the foreign exchange markets to the tune of $12 billion. Clarification needed. To try to stabilize its currency. 399. Prices for wheat and grain rose, with Ukraine being a major exporter of both crops. 403. Later in March 2014, the reaction of the financial markets to the Crimea annexation was surprisingly mellow, with global financial markets rising immediately after the referendum held in Crimea, one explanation being that the sanctions were already priced in following the earlier Russian incursion. 404. Other observers considered that the positive reaction of the global financial markets on Monday, March 17, 2014. For more of this type of videos, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. Thanks.